This is CRE 2024 from Milton Keynes. It's good to be here. I'm Chris from Monkey Nut, and I'm joined by Mary from Hope UK. Hi.
Hello, Chris.
Thank you for being with us. How has it been for you at CRE this year?
Well, I've just arrived today, and there's quite a buzz actually. And we have a stand, obviously, and my colleague who was here yesterday said that it's good because lots of people are coming up to us and they know who we are and they're interested in what we do. So we think that, the investment of being here year after year is paying off because we're getting quite a bit of interest. So that's really good. It's exciting.
That's wonderful to hear. That's really, really good. So let's talk about what Hope UK is for anybody that perhaps doesn't know who you are.
Sure. So Hope UK is a drug education charity, and we work primarily with children, young people, but also with adults, so parents and carers and professionals who have a responsibility for or duty of care towards young people, so teachers, youth workers within churches and without, family workers, foster carers, all sorts of people, anyone and everyone who may be interested, feel they want to know, need to know a bit about drugs and young people, or drugs and how they affect young people today.
And you work right the way across the UK as well, don't you?
We do, yes. We have a head office based in Kettering in Northamptonshire. So we do work locally, but we work across the UK, mainly through trained voluntary educators who will then work in their local communities. So I can't claim that we cover the whole of the UK because we have a small number of educators now compared to a few years ago, as we've lost a lot. As with most charities, a lot of volunteers have kind of disappeared since the pandemic. So we do our best to cover as much of the UK as possible.
Nice, and that's so important because the UK at the moment, if we look at it, it's going through a little bit of a crisis. Let's be honest. There is lots of drug issues. There are alcohol issues. What are some of the bigger issues that Hope UK are dealing with? I mean, they are big issues anyway. But if we drill down into either of those issues, are there specifics?
Yes. So let's think about the issues facing young people today. A whole host of issues that we didn't face in our youth, or in my youth. So vaping, for example, is huge. We've seen a huge spike in the number of young people taking up vaping, not because they want to quit smoking, which is why vapes were invented, but because it's a cool, trendy thing to do, and they don't actually understand what the risks are short term. And nobody knows what the risks are long term because they haven't been around long enough, unlike cigarettes. So schools are really struggling, and every school we work with wants us to talk to the young people about vaping. We do a lot of work with top end of primary year 6 for preparation to help them with the move up to secondary and talk to them about a whole host of things. But vaping is one of the key things because we want them to understand what these drugs are or what they are and why maybe it's not such a good idea to take up vaping. So we're doing a lot of that, and it's surprising because if you ask children of that age who were vapes invented for, they'll say teenagers or adults, but they do know, they've got somewhere in the back of their minds that it's for over 18s. But when you explain to them that actually they were invented for smokers who want to quit smoking, the penny drops. And then when you say to them, any of you here trying to quit smoking, they look at you as though you're gone a bit mad. And then you say, well, in that case, do you need to be taking up vaping when you go to secondary school? No. So, the penny drops, but that's a big issue. So alcohol, it's always out there. But the interesting thing is that trends are moving in the right direction. A lot of young people these days are choosing not to drink. There's a small but growing market of non-alcoholic beverages now. So that's kind of interesting, what's happening with that 16 to 25, 30 demographic. But alcohol is still easily available, so it's the drug that most young people are going to be coming across at some point because, let's face it, most parents probably like a drink, so it's there. Then there are other substances out there, things that are in the news all the time. Nitrous oxide was a big thing. We're not hearing so much about that since the change in the law. It's now a Class C drug as of November last year. But it's still a huge thing at music festivals, older teens, young people. And again, it's one of these relatively not as risky as other drugs. Maybe it's all relative. But you never know. It might be that one-time use for you that affects you badly. You have a very negative reaction. And that that's not a good thing. So it's being aware of the risks, but also giving young people equipping them really with the skills so that they can make the right choices for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you talk about vaping. I was having a conversation with someone on the school run actually, and we were both talking about this idea of smoking. And actually, one of my fears is that my children would discover smoking. And obviously, legislation has come in that actually, after a certain age now, children are not going to be able to smoke.
Yes.
And we were talking, was like, actually, I wonder if vaping at some point is going to come under that legislation as well. And it's an interesting subject area. And I think parents, as well as kind of children, need education too. Are you working with parents and
Yes,
those groups?
We do a lot of work with parents, often through schools. So we will. I love working with children, young people, well, teenagers really, in secondary school, and then having the opportunity to deliver education to the parents as well. So we sometimes organise that with schools and through churches. So parents are really worried about these issues, and also another issue that we could spend a long time talking about is county lines, pretty much affecting every town and city in this country. And young people, some as young as sort of 9, 10, 11, are being recruited by drugs gangs to act as runners delivering Class A drugs across the country. So that is a huge problem. So that's something that very much so parents, churches, leaders in the community need to be aware of so that we can be better at protecting our children, really.
Absolutely. I think certainly as a parent, I don't know what's out there, and it's quite a scary world. And if it's a scary world for me, I can't imagine what it's like for a child.
Yes.
So when you're going into schools, how are you branding the language exactly? Because
Right.
are you sugarcoating it as such, or are you really being quite forward and saying this is exactly what it is and this is what you're going to do?
So we don't sugarcoat, but we don't sensationalise, because there is such a thing as best practice drug education, and sensationalising, shock tactics, fear sort of tactics don't really work. They tend to be counterproductive. They might work on some children, but generally they're not a good approach. So the way we work, we're always age appropriate. So for example, we would not show under 16s a selection of all the drugs out there.
No.
Because I have all those drugs, obviously fakes, but they look realistic. So we would do that with parents, because parents love to see what they actually look like, because they don't know what, so they know kind of what they're dealing with, what they look like. So with younger, under 16s, we might show pictures, so you're kind of one step removed, rather than showing them something which might actually look really exciting, because it's a bit naughty, So, so it's all age appropriate. So we work with much younger children, but it will be totally age appropriate. And that will be more about how to stay healthy and how to make good choices and how to make good friends, how to choose your friends. So all those building blocks that they need in order to make good, healthy decisions
Life choices.
as they grow up. Life choices, life skills. Absolutely critical to drug education. It's kind of the foundational thing, the base from which we work. Drug knowledge is important, a bit of knowledge about the prevalence of drugs out there, and it varies in local areas. And also, so the things they might come across, and the risks, so short-term and long-term, because it's important to be aware of the risks, health harms, without going to extremes. So the extremes are there, and sometimes because something's been in the news and it is an extreme, it's worth talking about that, but emphasising that isn't normally what happens, but it could happen, because the key thing about any drug is it's a risk. They're not regulated, they're not licensed, we don't know what's in them, it's not necessarily what it says on the tin, So those are the kind of messages that we're trying to get across to young people.
Nice. And I guess the big question I want to ask is, how does faith slide into all of this? We're here at CRE. Do you get an opportunity to talk about faith when you're out and about talking?
Well, our Christian faith is fundamental to what we do. It's part of the legacy and the history of who we are as an organisation, and what motivates us as individuals, both staff and volunteers, because all our staff and volunteers are practising Christians. But we work with anybody and everybody out there. And I guess we often quote the verse John 10:10. Jesus has come to give us life in all its fullness. The thief comes to kill and destroy. And that we will kind of make that analogy with drugs. That is what the thief is using. So yes, it is very relevant to us. And when we're working with church groups and church youth groups, for example, there are opportunities to bring in our faith and why faith is relevant to this, and what the Bible might have to say. But generally, we are bringing Jesus to people by doing this work. If we're going into schools, it's not appropriate to start evangelizing. Obviously, we don't do that. But you can be giving out a lot of truths, biblical truths. You can be speaking them, and they don't know that that's come straight from the Bible, so you can be speaking truth into young people's lives. And for me, that is a huge opportunity and a huge privilege to be able to do that. And to do this work, it is a calling to commit, to train, to become a volunteer, because we are looking to recruit volunteers from the churches, which is partly why we're here. It is a big commitment, but you get very good training. It's accredited by the Open College Network, and and then we train people to work in their communities. So if people have a passion for this work and they feel called, then I'd definitely encourage them to explore it and to get in touch with us.
That's really good to hear. And I'm sure there will be people that want to come and support you and to be trained with you too. If anybody wants to find out more about Hope UK, where can they go online?
So if you go to our website, which is hopeuk.org, they can find out more, or they can contact us, just call our office. And we've got a lot of resources on our website as well, many of which are free to churches for use with their young people.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for joining us here at CRE.
Thank you.
And if you would like to exhibit at CRE next year, or perhaps find out a little bit more about the exhibitors who are here at 2024's CRE in Milton Keynes, why don't you go to the website? It's creonline.co.uk.